All right, I'm going to walk you through the form tag here on W3 Schools and how to put together a form. So here is an example. Obviously, you've all filled out forms before. This is what the code looks like, and it really is just an open form tag and a closing form tag. There are some attributes that you add to the form to make it work, and then there's some input and elements here that will let you enter data in and kind of include with the submission of the form. So, and of course, you'll have to have a button here that'll submit that. So I'm going to walk you through it really quick. The input types are, again, this is all on W3 Schools, so this is a great resource. And the simplest input type is a text field. And as you might guess, a text field is just that, an area for a text. One of the things to keep in mind is, this is not actually called out here, is the label field, and we'll cover that in a minute. But you want to label all of these things. You don't want to just put in text and include it right before an input type, because again, if I'm deaf or blind, if I'm blind and I'm cruising through this, my screen reader is going to read this, and it will actually read the label to you and let you put in text. So I can tab through, for example, in this page. If I come over here, I can tab through these form fields and enter them in using a screen reader, and it will kind of announce what form field you're in if you've used the label tag correctly. So not using the label tag, we'll cover that here in just a second. We're going to keep going though with different input types for now. So we've got text fields, we've got a password field, and so the way the code syntax works on this is you've got the tag name, input type. There are several different types of input types that will let you put in data, and we'll cover that in a little bit more detail in a minute. But obviously text is one, password is another. And what happens is you have the type as an attribute, and then you have the name. And this is important because you're going to pass this information onto the script that will be processed. So you need to pass over usernames with this data with a value that lets the the processing code know, hey, this is the information for username. Okay, so obviously the password is, if I go password here, it's going to put in dots, right? So submit is another important one because it's a button that lets you submit the form, and that's kind of unique. And you'll notice that it's an input tag, but as soon as you put type submit, it puts a value, turns it into a button. So that's an input type of text field, that's an input type of submit. The code, the browser automatically knows this is now a button. So let's see here. We have a reset, which is also a button. We have a reset button here, and I'll clear the form. We have a radio button. So if we come here to the radio buttons, we can select something in here. But there's only one option available, so you can only choose one of these three options. And you'll notice that they're wrapped inside. They're actually not wrapped inside. Sorry, they're listed individually, but they belong to the same name. So if you have all of these with the same name, they belong to the same value. And if I submit this, it's going to hand off one value for the gender name, and the name here is gender. So again, only one value. So let's close this, and we'll move on to some of the other options here. So a checkbox is really similar, and it looks very much the same, but you notice the names are different. And these are all individual fields. So this is very much like a first name field and a last name field. You've got a name here that are unique. You also can define a value here, and again, that's going to say, because you're not entering any text, you're just saying, yeah, this is a checkbox. It's a value that you're gonna hand off to the form. So if I try it here, you notice value bike is not visible here, but when I submit it, when I have a car and submit it, it doesn't say I have a car, it submits the value, the car value. All right, moving on. Okay, button, very similar to a submit button, but it's actually an input type of button. And usually this is associated with some JavaScript that lets you kind of process something on the page. So you can do something like go to another page, you can, there's all kinds of, sky's the limit, but you're really usually attaching JavaScript to the button input type. So you're probably not going to use that in this class. Okay, so this is where we get interesting. This is some of the things that have been added in HTML5, and I'm not going to go over all of these, but you can see that they're very much the same. You've got an input and then a type of color. So what's important here is you've got a lot better user experience now with HTML5, and so you're inputting just the data that you're going to be asking for. So if I input month, it'll only let me put in a month. If I put in a number, it will only let me do 0 through 9, right? The advantage here is in mobile, where I can click on this and fill this form field out for number, and it's going to give me a number pad on my keypad on my phone. So that makes my text input a lot more easy. Range is very interesting that it's a slider. It lets you use a minimum and a maximum, and you can slide between them and set a number. So it's a way to control user input. As a database developer, I will tell you it's very frustrating to kind of give a user an open, kind of ended, and very much a security risk to give them an open-ended text field to put information in. I want to say, show me all of the times someone put in 5. They could, if I give them a text field for this, they could type in the number 5, they could type in the word 5, they can type 5 dashes, I don't know, Morse code, who knows. But if I give them a range, they can't they can't enter in the wrong number here. They can only slide the slider and give me the number 5 that I'm submitting. So I've got a way of really tightly controlling what the user is putting in. So that's a great thing as a database developer. Telephone, again, URL, all of these things are controlling what the user can put in. Interesting type of input here is color. You can click on this, and I can actually have a color picker pop up, pick the color, close the window, and submit it, and it's going to actually give me the hex number here, which is a very important kind of value that lets me pick that color. So if you're not familiar with hex colors, look at that for text input or using hex colors on the web. Okay, so we'll close this. Date is great. Also gives you a pop-up with the date. If you notice as I roll over this, gives me a pop-up. This used to be a lot of JavaScript code, and it was very tricky to do and required special programming skills, a lot of error checking. No more of that. You can actually just submit put in the date field, date type input, and you just pick a date, and you're off to the races. So it puts in this date. Okay. So we'll close that. So I wanted to show you a practical example here. We've got all of these things that are going to do checking. Use the field type that is appropriate for the field that you're putting in, right? So if you want them to put the month in, use the type month. Don't use a text field. All right, I'm going to hop over here, and I've created a little bit of code here in HTML. So again, I'm using the form tag, I'm using the action attribute and the method here, and this is my destination. This is a PHP script you can use that is just, all it does is parrot back what you submitted, so you can see that you're submitting the right type of data and the right values that you're passing along. And if I come over here to my browser, and let's see here. No, it doesn't look like I have it here, so we'll just find it right there. And here's that Mickey Mouse. And you notice that it put in this default value, and of course we can just get rid of this whole value tag. This is totally optional here. So I can submit, I can upload that, reload. And so now I can say my name is Jeff Mouse and submit it. And it says I submitted 2 items, and my the name for that input type was first name, and last name was Jeff. Notice that this is a post. It doesn't append the URL. If I go back and I change this input method to get, submit it. Let's see here. Oops, I want to go back. There we go. And we'll refresh this. And I can say Milton Mouse. I submit it. Now you see that it's updated the URL with my values and my names, and it's still handed it off. You're going to want to use the method that is required by your program. This program is a little unique in that it handles either get or post. Most will not, and your user, your programmer will probably tell you, give them to me as a post, and you'll just put post in there. So I believe, is that everything that I wanted to cover? There is one last thing that I wanted to cover, and that is an input type of hidden. And so if I say input and type equals quote hidden and say value equals pudgy bunny, and close it, and I submit and I upload this, what you'll see is nothing in the browser. So if I go refresh, oops, if I go back here and I refresh, nothing has changed. But if I look at the source code, I could see here in the URL, I'm sorry, in the source code, that there is this hidden value. So you can do things like user ID, things that the user really doesn't need to see. You don't want to put stuff in here that is secure, obviously, because I can just view the source code and it's exposed. But if I do put this hidden in here, hidden value in here, it's tough for the user to kind of change it. They can spoof it, and again, it's not secure, but it's a way of kind of adding information without the user really seeing it. So again, I can say happy mouse and submit, and this time, oh, it doesn't see the hidden value. That's interesting. Oh, did I not submit a? Well, I did not submit. Didn't add a name to this, so that was a mistake. Equals my hidden form. You want to keep your names internet safe. No spaces. No, just you know, the usual suspects when you're naming something. So now I'm going to say happy and submit this, and there we go. So I've got this hidden form, and it's sending Pudgy Bunny through my hidden form. Okay, well that'll do it. That's the bulk of HTML forms. I hope you found it useful.